Most descriptions of the Enneagram 5 fixation highlights introvertedness, intellectualism, and special interests. But the Enneagram isn't about what a person does, it's about why. So why are 5s introverted, intellectual, and prone to special interests? Well, the 5 fixation is a fear response. The world is a big, scary place. A type 6 will manage that fear by looking outward, but a type 5 will manage that fear by looking inward. 5s need to feel personally competent. It's not about where is the safe place. It's about how can I make myself a safe place. The stereotypical 5 accomplishes this through intellectualizing. Basically, these 5s will have a theory of everything. During their lives, they've built up an understanding of how the world works. They've built up a personal philosophy of what is. 5s think they know how the world works. They can plug everything neatly into their philosophy. Everything has to make sense, because if it doesn't, then suddenly the world is scary again. So one of the most common 5 stories is about the 5 facing a great mystery, something unexplainable or inherently chaotic, perhaps even divine or supernatural.
I don't even know him. I am having all of these fantasies about some man I have never even met who lives in Seattle.
And positive growth for a 5 is accepting that it's okay to not know. It's accepting that this thing is beyond me, such as the revelation of Rust Cohle at the end of True Detective. After clinging to his nihilistic philosophy for the entire show, he finally opens his heart to hope. Good old irrational hope. Negative growth, by contrast, can be when a knowledge seeker flies too close to the sun. They have to know. They have to make sense of it all, even if there's no sense to be made.
I want to know. I want to know.
I need to know why. What did we do wrong? Why do you hate us?
But this is what people neglect about 5s. That intellectual stereotype is one of many ways the 5 complex can manifest in a person. Remember, the 5's whole deal is about becoming personally competent to manage the big, scary outside world. Just as common as the intellectual 5 is the gym bro 5, the I studied the blade looking ass 5. I've talked a lot about Hot D in this series, partially because I want the clicks, but also because I love some of the depth these characters were given. I've seen some people a bit upset that Aemond Targaryen, Fire and Blood's ultimate evil badass, was written as having insecurities, but I think the 5 complex really suits him. Aemond is obsessed with his own competence. Don't confuse 5s with 3s. 3s want people to know they're competent, 5s just want to be competent, because deep down they're scared shitless and overwhelmed by the world around them, and competence is how they cope. This isn't to say they don't have an ego around that competence. Walter White doesn't accept help with his cancer treatment because he needs to feel personally able to handle things on his own. Aemond is constantly thinking about how good of a fighter he is. The competence of 5s has this masturbatory dimension to it, like they really get off on how utterly prepared they are. Remember, we develop insecurities around things we didn't have in abundance. The bullied kid who felt weak, incompetent, and alone is going to turn himself into a singular, self-sufficient killing machine. And when 5s are in their element and they've put in all the legwork and they got this, they can become extremely brash and overconfident. Some of the wealthiest people I know are 5s. They like to see that number tick up. It's not that they want to control you or they want you to like them. It's a subconscious security blanket. So we often see different types of hoarding with 5s. Hoarding money, hoarding skill, hoarding knowledge. Bill from The Last of Us is another common 5 archetype, the Doomsday Prepper 5. You can see his ego when he finally gets to execute his apocalypse plans. He loves it. He loves how competent he is. But Bill's actual arc encapsulates a different side of 5ness, the 5 love story. Deep down, 5s are overwhelmed by the universe, and that tends to include a fear of emotional engulfment. Emotions are chaos. Emotions don't make sense. I'm freaking out. What is this? I need to go back to my basement immediately. So that unexplainable divine that 5s have to reckon with doesn't have to be a literal mystery or something supernatural. It can be love. The 5 love story is about allowing themselves to have that warmth, even though it terrifies them. You can see why 5s like Bill often get paired up with 2s like Frank. 2s are overloving, while 5s are emotionally stingy.
You live in this safe little world where no one challenges you and you're scared shitless to do anything else because
Don't
that
tell
won't
me
mean
about
you
my
have to
world. Don't
change.
tell me about my world.
Avoidant attachment slots nicely into the 5 complex. That's the whole story of Good Will Hunting. He's become this snarky intellectual to compensate for the fact that he's utterly terrified of connection, and in order to grow, he has to take the leap of faith and give intimacy a chance. The clip I played earlier is from this movie called Sleepless in Seattle. It's about a guy whose wife dies, and then he talks about it on a radio show, and this lady hears it, and the entire movie movie is about them trying to find each other, and they do at the very end, and they only have one scene together, the end. Tom Hanks in this movie is just a regular type, nice, wholesome dude guy, but Meg Ryan's character is way more interesting. She has this whole cynical philosophy around love, yet she inexplicably feels drawn to this man. So she spends the whole movie rationalizing and trying to stay on top of the situation, but of course her final choice is a leap of faith. She abandons all reason and goes to be with dude guy. Another thing, I haven't talked about static characters in this series much because I wanted to emphasize that typing only makes sense when you can identify deep internal problems. Otherwise, it's just a BuzzFeed quiz, right? Enneagram is not about identifying a character's vibe, it's about identifying...
Oh my God, we know.
Okay,
Stop saying it.
All right, you get it. That said, though, I will make an exception for fives because a lot of the time they're low-key begging to be supporting characters. Fives tend to drift to the fringes of society. They often play the role of the wizard who lives on the edge of town and has all the sacred knowledge. Philip Seymour Hoffman in Almost Famous comes to mind. Just this guy who stays in his lane and organizes the world around his big philosophical opinions.
Music. Yeah, true music. Love disguises sex, and sex disguises love.
Philosophy itself is very five-coded. What's the theory of everything? What's the worldview that ties this chaotic mess together? Probably my favorite five story ever is Altered States. It's about a scientist who's on a quest to find the root of all human nature, the great answer to everything that will give him the peace he needs. He destroys his life in the pursuit of this answer. He pushes his mind and body to the brink of annihilation only to realize there is no answer. And what he needed all along was to accept the chaos, which is again placed on the same side of the arc as reuniting with the love of his life. It's been suggested that the five complex is another way of saying autism. People hear this and go, no, stop, we're not doing that, because autism spectrum disorder is a recognized clinical phenomenon and the Enneagram isn't. While I do understand this, it's important to remember that official psychological classifications are also made up. They're labels we've applied to better communicate and sort people according to their needs. Like there isn't a box in your brain labeled autism that's either checked or unchecked, it's a broad umbrella pertaining to a cluster of traits and thought patterns. I know fives who are autistic, I also know autistic people who aren't fives, and I know fives who aren't autistic. But when you hear fives are people who come into the world and fundamentally feel afraid of or at odds with it, so they become hyper-competent or knowledgeable in one area to stave off their anxiety and fear of engulfment, often developing a theory of everything that they stubbornly cling to because they need to file everything neatly in their minds to be at peace, it's okay to be like, oh yeah, that sounds pretty autism-coded. Anyways, another five story is that of J. Robert Oppenheimer. Oppenheimer explores what it looks like when a person who lives in their head suddenly realizes, oh shit, this is real. The emotions really creep up on fives. They neglect that emotional side of themselves because it doesn't fit the theory. But all they're doing is repressing it, and eventually it's going to come out. So a lot of times, moments of weakness for fives will be emotional in nature, because that side of them is insecure and underdeveloped. They don't know how to handle it. Even when fives do open up, it's usually to one trusted person. I think this is why five love stories work as well as they do. There's a scarcity to their love, so it makes it hit harder. In terms of personality, again, super general, fives tend to be socially awkward. They'll ramble and ramble without much thought as to how they're being perceived. They know the truth, and they are going to tell you, even if that means boring you to death. Of course, it goes without saying that they don't actually have to know the truth by default. You could have a five whose philosophy is absolute dog shit. The point of the five's rigid worldview is that it makes them feel comfortable. A lot of the time, fives can be really unkempt. They tend to neglect their bodies since they spend so much time in their heads. But they might also have some weird sense of style that highlights their esoteric prophet status. The five will just have the worst haircut, or an absolutely bonkers face tat or wardrobe, or a sapphire where their eye used to be, and it's just this immutable part of their identity. But yeah, five stories: competence, truth-seeking, independence, existential dread, leaps of faith. If you saw the 6 video, you know that these are very similar to some of the 6 themes. Indeed, the two blur together sometimes, and I've drawn the line in my own way that some of you might disagree with. A lot of you might be inclined to gatekeep the 5 as only the intellectual types, which is fine, it's all made up anyway. But for me, internal security versus external security seemed like the best way to divvy it up. So yeah, that's 5s. Goodbyes.